Hey, it's Mosquito, also known as Chris. Welcome to the shop. Today we're going to turn a footed bowl. Almost. So essentially, this is just a log that I've thrown on the lathe. It's spinning end over end, and I just take either a Forstner bit or a spade bit, and I just kind of drill two spots through the bark. That way, the headstock, the drive center, and the tailstock live center both have a good purchase on actual wood rather than on the bark itself. Doesn't always work with the drive center, but I'm basically just going to start roughing out the shape here. And the reason I started with the whole piece was, one, I had it. I didn't end up cutting this one in half because of some defects in it that I didn't really want to make into a half bowl blank. And we'll see that later where we start dealing with some of that. But basically, I knew I was going to need a little bit taller piece because I was hoping to make a footed bowl. And here you can kind of see some of those defects I was talking about. There's this branch coming right out here, and there's just a little bit of rot from some bark inclusion. It's still really kind of soft and punky almost, but anyway, continuing on to rough the shape in. One of the key things to remember when you're turning is to move your body. So here you can kind of see as I'm following that shape, my whole body is moving and my arms really don't move a whole lot. That is good technique and not always easy to remember, but these are some of those defects, and well, we'll keep kicking those down the road. So anyway, we're going to flatten out the bottom a little bit more just to kind of see, I don't know, where we're at, where we need to get to, because obviously I'm going to want to have some actual wood and not just the kind of cambium layer between the bark and the wood. And if I'm going to be grabbing this thing with the chuck jaws, I want to be actually grabbing some solid wood. So just kind of getting this to a point where I can gauge how big of a tenon I'm going to be able to put on it. And I think I should be able to use my 100mm jaws. And so that's kind of what I'm going for here. I just basically go at it until I can check it with my, what is that, Nova dovetail chuck chisel thing? Dovetail chisel? Whatever. Anyway, I just revert back to the tried and true dividers. After that, I kind of come in with the skew and just use that to flatten the, I guess, shoulder or the top, and then get the angle on the dovetail just right. And yeah, back to roughing. So I'm kind of trying to follow the same or similar shape as I did for that snack bowl, where it's kind of the rounded side that curves back in at the top. And since this one's a little bit bigger, I have a little bit more curve back in. And that was actually a mistake that I kind of wish I wouldn't have done. I just sort of flattened the top of it out a little bit, and I kind of wish I wouldn't have done that, but we'll get back to that later. So it was at this point that I started looking at some of those defects a little bit more, and obviously I'm not going to be able to turn them out, so I'm basically just taking, I wouldn't say a finishing cut, it's a little bit heavy for a finishing cut, but kind of starting to get that shape finalized before I dig into these knots. So I'm just using some CA glue, trying to fill those in just to stabilize them and keep those from, I guess, popping out and some of the cracks from propagating. So just a little bit of CA glue and some activator. I kind of switched back and forth between the Rockler stick fast, I think it was medium, and I also had some thin. And then later on I end up using some Starbond black just to try and blend in with some of those knots, because it was like the bark inclusion around the knots that was a pretty dark color. So it turned out okay in the pieces that worked, but you know, hindsight being what it is, I probably wouldn't have gone through all this work if I would have known the outcome in the end. So anyway, yep, just gonna be filling these for a little bit and then kind of alternate between filling and then scraping and filling and turning and all that fun. Once things seemed sufficiently filled in, I kind of did one last pass with the negative rake scraper, and then we moved on to sanding some stuff. And basically, what I always do, just have the power drill and just kind of progress through the grits. This one, again, I went up to, I think it was 320 grit on the outside. And like I usually say, I don't typically go too far beyond that just because that's, I don't know, personal preference. Anyway, here I'm just sort of taking off that little nub that the live center is using. Just, it's a little bit too big and too long for the chuck to be able to get around. So I'm just sort of working that down so that I can get that inside the chuck. So getting this all turned around and put back on the lathe, and you can kind of see those knots actually kind of look cool. I don't mind the look of them, but well, we'll see if they actually stick around. So here I'm turned around and I'm hollowing and basically just start working away a lot of that wood on the inside, and the shape on the outside is obviously going to dictate the shape of the inside, but I'm kind of just going for a bowl, you know, just, I mean, I know that sounds stupid because I'm turning a bowl on the lathe, but sort of just the rounded shape, almost like if somebody was making one of those paper mache piñatas back in the day, if you ever did that around a balloon where you put the paper mache around it and then pop the balloon and you make a piñata. But anyway, I was going for a nice round bottom on this bowl because I was planning on making it footed. I was going to then turn it around and sort of turn, I guess, the tenon away a little bit better. But anyway, once I got the bulk of it removed with the bowl gouge, I'm using one of those hunter tools again just to keep using it, I guess. I have it, so I wanted to try to use it. I think I'm going to try using it a little bit more because I was talking to some of the people at Woodcraft, and it seems like you can actually just use it like a regular bowl gouge. So I'm going to try to do that. But anyway, after that, got the scraper out, and we are scraping the inside to try and get a nice finish, because one of the things with smaller bowls, and especially bowls that curve back in at the top, is that they're kind of a pain to sand inside if they're not that big. So bowl bottoming gouge here, just trying to get the best finish that I can. And then after that, we just kind of keep chasing flat, I guess, or round, smooth, whatever. So I was doing one last pass with the bottoming gouge, and I was pretty happy with that. And I was looking at this knot, and it just fell right out. I mean, like, it was barely even in anymore, despite all the gluing that I was trying to do. So, well, it was at that point I kind of decided, okay, I guess we're kind of done, because it was pretty fragile, and there was a crack that was kind of starting to propagate, and I didn't really want to risk it. So I thought at that point, rather than trying to keep pushing it, I would just start sanding and see if I could get something usable out of it at least, rather than accidentally catching something and blowing it up. So that's unfortunately where I basically made the decision that I'm just going to flip it around, kind of put it on the chuck, jam chuck style with some drawer liner, and I'm just going to turn the tenon off and we'll keep it as a bowl. Live to die another day, I guess, but we'll have to try this footed bowl thing again in the future, because it is something that I've never done before, and I am hoping to actually accomplish at some point, because I don't know, it's just fun to try something new. So here I'm just doing what I normally do, which is kind of turn the tenon off and then hollow out the bottom just a hair, and we'll sand it up and get some finish on it. And well, I guess it's still a functional bowl, and we'll call it a conversation piece now. My almost 4-year-old son has asked a lot of questions. Why is there a hole in it? Well, I guess from that perspective, it at least kind of works out. So just going with my tried and true finish, which is tried and true original, and just kind of putting it on with a white Scotch-Brite pad, really fine, kind of non-aggressive thing, and then wipe it all off when we're done. So there you have it. Here is the finished bowl, I guess. Not quite a footed bowl, but it is a bowl nonetheless. Anyway, it was at about an hour and 52 minutes, and again, I probably could have saved 15-20 minutes by not trying to fill in all those knots with CA glue and whatnot, but oh well, such is wood. I appreciate those of you that stuck around this far, and I would appreciate it if you subscribed, hit that notification bell, and I will catch you in the next one.